Hey, we're learning how to resist authoritarianism by looking back at historical examples. Involve kids. Connect with younger generations. I know that doesn't mean that you have to figure out what like 6-7 means, but it does mean don't forget that young people are often our greatest source of energy and like hope for the future in these movements, and yet they're often the least involved. They're often the smallest demographic to vote, for example. You could connect with young people by mentoring them, right? There was a famous educator, James Lawson, who mentored a lot of young Black students when he was working at Vanderbilt in Nashville. Among his students were Diane Nash, James Bevel, Bernard Lafayette, Marion Barry, and John Lewis, people that were going to go on to become leaders in the civil rights movement. This doesn't mean you have to like quit your job and become a teacher. I don't know, join the Big Brother, Big Sister program. Find a way to mentor people and connect with young people and kind of help guide them on their way. But even more importantly, if you're involved in a movement, if you're organizing or supporting a protest, an organization, whatever, ask, how are we getting young people involved? Are we making sure they know they're invited? For example, in Birmingham in the 1960s, during this whole summer of protests and kind of violent repression by the police against Black groups pushing for integration, one of the most famous events was the Children's Crusade. Thousands of Black kids skipped school and went to march. And I just want to be clear, they didn't spontaneously do this. No, Black organizers found groups of these kids. They actually educated them on nonviolent resistance. They made sure they were safe. They said, this is how you're going to do it. You're not going to fight back. This is what you should say if someone asks you this question. And the kids were met by brutal police repression, including water cannons. But guess what? It was televised. And as mostly white audiences all around the country watched as young kids, as young as elementary school, were dancing and singing and chanting and marching, and then being met with violence by the white police, it changed a lot of minds about what this movement was actually about and who was in the right and who was in the wrong. My favorite example of young people getting involved is in Nazi Germany. Throughout the 1930s, there was a group called the Edelweiss Pirates. And what they did was they dropped out of school. These groups, essentially like small local gangs, were often between the ages of 14 and 17. At 14, you were legally allowed to leave school, and up through 17, you were not going to be drafted into the military. So they had a lot of free time. And what they did was they formed their own organizations that were in contrast to the Hitler Youth. They would organize their own hiking and camping trips, defying the freedom of movement. They were especially highly antagonistic to members of the Hitler Youth. They would often organize and ambush their patrols, and they took a lot of pleasure in beating up kids their own age who were involved and like very active in the Hitler Youth. Now, is this an example of nonviolent resistance? No. Am I okay with Nazis getting punched in the face? Just like Captain America? Yeah. Include young people.